Welcome everyone. Hello, my name is Mark Riley, and I'm excited to welcome you tonight to our Roundtable event, the Early Education and Care Workforce, Challenges and Solutions. I'm Mark Riley, the Vice President of Policy and Government Relations at Jumpstart, and a proud member of the Common Start Coalition. Tonight, we have interpretation services available in Spanish. In a moment, you'll see a globe icon with the word interpretation at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you are joining from a mobile device, you will need to click on the button with the three dots, and then you will see the option language interpretation. Everyone must choose the language in which they want to participate. To listen to the meeting in Spanish, just click on the globe icon at the bottom of the screen and choose the Spanish language, and then stay on that channel. And now the interpreter will repeat those directions in Spanish.
Bienvenidos y buenas noches a todos. Esta noche tenemos servicios de interpretación en español. Usted verá un icono en un segundo de un globo con la palabra interpretation en la parte inferior de su pantalla de Zoom. Si se une desde un celular, tendrá que hacer el clic en el botón de los tres puntitos y entonces verá la opción Language Interpretation. Todos deben elegir en el idioma en el que desean participar. Gracias.
Thank you, Carla.
You're
And we'll
welcome.
just pause for a quick minute just to allow folks to select those interpretation options. Excellent. All right, let's get started. Jumpstart joined the Common Start Coalition years ago because we believe in the power of collective organizing and grassroots advocacy. For so many years, our early education sector has fought alone. Now, as part of Common Start, we are joined by so many allies who likewise see the critical importance of equitable early education in supporting healthy children, families, and communities. Over 130 organizations across the labor, healthcare, faith-based, early education, and business communities are now active members of the coalition. And true to our grassroots commitment, Common Start chapters have been built across the state with parents, early educators, advocates, and others, all united to fight for accessible and affordable care for all the Commonwealth's young learners. This broad-based coalition has built tremendous momentum for change on Beacon Hill. Thanks to the hard work of the grassroots chapters and organizations, now more than half the members in each the House and Senate have co-sponsored the Common Start bill. And the legislature's Early Education and Care Economic Review Commission is poised to recommend major new initiatives and funding to get us on a path toward a strong and stable early education and care system that will also be more affordable for families. More than at any time in decades, transformative change for early education is within reach in Massachusetts and in Washington, D.C. But we have some work to do to continue to educate the public and our elected officials about what's really happening in our communities, the benefits of Common Start's proposal, and to ensure that the recommendations anticipated in the Economic Review Commission's report are enacted into law. To that end, Jumpstart is pleased to be hosting tonight's final roundtable in the Common Start series. Over the next 45 minutes, we're going to focus specifically on the challenges faced by early educators and the ways the Common Start bill would help to address those challenges. Let me be clear. Early educators are the heart and soul of the early childhood sector, but our society is failing them. They play an essential role in educating and caring for our children. They teach critical social emotional skills and ignite a love of learning in young minds when their brains are developing fastest. The daily work of these educator heroes also facilitate the entry of parents, especially women, into the larger workforce. Yet stemming from decades of gender and racial discrimination, early childhood educators have been taken for granted, underpaid, and underappreciated for too long. Drawn away by better wages in nearly every other job, thousands of early educators have left the field, and programs are having more difficulty recruiting and retaining any staff at all, let alone the diverse, well-trained, and highly skilled educators that our young children deserve. We are in an early educator crisis in this state and nation, and change is needed yesterday. Tonight, we will go deeper into the challenges and solutions for the ECE workforce. We have assembled an amazing group of experts to share their experience and knowledge with us. I will introduce these distinguished guests in a moment. But first, a tireless advocate for early educators in the entire ECE community, Senator Elizabeth Warren, has a message that she would like to share with you all.
Hello everyone at Common Start, and thank you for having me with you. I really wish we could do this in person, but for now, we're just going to have to do this by video. So I want to start by saying thank you to the Coalition for Social Justice for putting together this very special project. Today, I'm going to talk about the need for affordable, accessible, high-quality education and childcare for all of our families. As you know, I'm for universal childcare. It's good for babies, good for parents, good for providers, and good for our country. But we can't wait any longer. We have had a childcare crisis since long before the pandemic, and COVID has just made this a whole lot worse. Prices are going up, providers are struggling to make ends meet, and American families cannot find the care they need and cannot pay for it. Family budgets are getting squeezed while billionaires and corporations are just doing great. Over the last few years, corporations have grown even bigger as industry after industry has seen more concentration and less competition. They figured out that inflation is actually good for their business. They can pass along higher prices to consumers, higher prices that not only cover their higher costs, but higher prices that also just do a little price gouging on the side to expand their profit margins on the backs of hardworking families. Now, Democrats are on the side of families, trying to reduce those costs and to make sure that every family has a chance to thrive. And that means tackling the pandemic that's led to the supply chain kinks and cracking down on price gouging and promoting more competitive markets. It also means delivering on affordable childcare so that working mamas and daddies can continue to support their families. Childcare and early education are critical for children's development and critical so that parents can keep on working. But it costs more than what most parents can afford, and care for infants and toddlers costs even more. We don't make parents pay for second grade. We tell them they can come and enroll their children in public school for free. But parents of 3-year-olds have to spend 10% of their income or more on childcare. It's important that our children have meaningful learning experiences from a very young age. Childcare isn't just about making sure that children don't fall down a flight of stairs or otherwise get injured while you're away. Childcare is also about early learning experiences, the experiences that childcare providers give our children. Learning starts at birth. We need a very high ratio of teachers to infants so the babies can be held and talked to and read to, all the things that give them a good start in life. And we need to pay childcare workers the respect and the wages that they deserve to ensure that they're able to continue in this work. Robust investments in childcare make it possible for parents to work and to provide our children with important educational experiences from the earliest possible age. To summarize, our current childcare system doesn't work for about half a dozen reasons, and it's time that we support every childcare worker and every preschool teacher in America by raising their wages. As a nation, we have an interest in supporting high-quality, accessible childcare for all our babies. So that's why I'm fighting for a really robust child care program like Common Start to help families that are struggling with the cost or struggling because they don't even find a child care center. Ensuring affordable, high quality care for every family that needs it truly would be transformative. Transformative for our babies, transformative for millions of women across this country, and transformative for our economy. I'm glad to be standing shoulder to shoulder with the coalition as we fight this fight. We need to get this done. And thank you again for having me here.
Senator Warren is absolutely amazing, and I'm so grateful that she was willing to prepare this message for you. She'd hoped to be here in person with you all, but really glad, and we are so fortunate to have her in our corner. All right, so let's get you to this amazing panel that we have. So first, I'm just going to introduce each of our 5 panelists. Dr. Ashley Williams is Jumpstart's National Vice President of Programs, where she leads the organization's workforce strategy to expand the pipeline of qualified, diverse talent pursuing careers in early education. Dr. Williams has worked in several roles in the ECE sector, including serving as a preschool teacher and director, teacher educator, and policy analyst focused on the ECE workforce. Most importantly, Dr. Williams is a proud Jumpstart alum, as she started her interest and career in ECE through her experience in the program. Suzanne Stillinger has been working with children and families in Massachusetts for almost 20 years and is currently a teacher, accessibility specialist, and advisory board member at New Village Preschool in Northampton, Mass. She graduated from Smith College in 2017 as an Ada Comstock Scholar and single mother, an accomplishment that would have remained out of reach without access to affordable childcare. She is also a 2021-22 Massachusetts Teach Plus Policy Fellow as part of their first cohort to include early childhood educators. Barbara Gallagher, is the Chief Operating Officer for the community group Community Daycare in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Barbara has had 30 plus years in the field. At Community Day, she currently works with center-based programs, out-of-school time programs, as well as with the enrollment and billing and the training departments at Community Daycare. She actually does it all up there. Liz Sheehan Castro is the director of the Massachusetts Child Care Training Fund, a program of SEIU Education and Support Fund, a national nonprofit that works alongside SEIU, the Service Employees International Union. In her role, Liz supports the unionized family childcare educator workforce in Massachusetts in creating educator-led professional development and leadership programs. And last, but certainly not least, Lisa Pryor is president-elect of the Boston Club, New England's largest member organization for professional and executive women. As an entrepreneur and author, Lisa is CEO of Pryor Consulting, a boutique firm specializing in leadership coaching and change consulting, working with executives across a range of industries. She's been based in Greater Boston since 2000. She's part of our panel today representing the voice of professional and executive women. I'm pleased to kick off the roundtable discussion by asking my new esteemed colleague, Dr. Ashley Williams, to provide some context for us all about the state of the early education workforce around the country and specifically here in Massachusetts. Dr. Williams.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's an honor to be here. It's important for everyone to know that I had the privilege of serving as an employee at the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment at UC Berkeley under the leadership of Dr. Leah J.E. Austin and in the vision of Dr. Marcy Whitebook. So I was fortunate to be a learner there, and I want to bring some of the key things that I've learned about the ECE workforce into the space for us to establish some just shared understanding about the state of the ECE workforce. So, nationally, we're still waiting on some results from the National Survey of ECE, from their 2019 study. But however, some of the most recent estimates about the demographics of the ECE workforce report that nationally, the ECE workforce is made up of about 40 to 41% people of color and about 92 to 94% women. So we all know that this is a woman present field. While we do know that the racial and ethnic composition of the ECE workforce varies depending on setting, it's important to note that nationally, the ECE workforce is racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse, especially in comparison to K-12 teachers, where 80% identify as white. Children of color are the majority among the 0 to 5 population in our nation, and we are becoming more researched and clearer on the benefits of children sharing space with educators that share their cultural, linguistic, and racial backgrounds. The ECE workforce has a cultural capital to respond to the needs of children, families in our communities, yet too often the needs of early educators themselves are not centered as a priority. Across the board, early educators are under-supported and compensated poorly for the critical work they show up each day to do. I love to say that as a former early educators are brain architects for our youngest learners. According to the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment Workforce Index, the child care workforce occupation is it's in the second percentile when ranked by annual pay. So this means that only 2% of jobs of all the occupations in our country earn less than childcare workers. The 2020 median salary for childcare workers, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, was $12.24 an hour. In Massachusetts, when we kind of dial in and look here, the state profile from CSBCE's 2020 Workforce Index shows that the poverty rate for early educators in Massachusetts was a staggering 15%. And additionally, early educators with a bachelor's degree are paid 35% less than their colleagues in the K-8 system. And I'll be sure to drop the link to the report that I'm referencing just in a second. While all early educators are impacted by low wages in the system, research from CSBCE has made it clear that the impacts of poor compensation are not borne equally across our workforce. To be clear, there are racial wage gaps in which Black early educators earn 78 cents less than their white peers performing the same work. So for the purpose of this conversation today, we can submit that the ECE workforce, which is largely women and has a strong presence of women of color, and given up the makeup of the ECE workforce, we have to concern ourselves with issues of racial and gender inequity when we're in discussion of these issues, priorities, and solutions to ensure that we aren't actually entrenching these inequities that early educators already face. The data points I presented are from research on early educators. It has a long history in our country and a long history and presence in the ECE system. There's a legacy in our country for devaluing labor performed by women, immigrants, and people of color. And our ECE workforce sits in the intersection of all of these things. And the pandemic has only exacerbated these issues of racial, gender, and economic justice for the ECE workforce. So I implore us as a community today, as we're working toward an equitable and effective ECE system that works for our children, families, and communities, we have to center early educators in this work. We'll never achieve that system that we desire if we don't ensure that early educators have the preparation, supportive working conditions, and the compensation they need to do this work.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams, for providing this context and your insights and expertise. Among the things you just heard a moment ago, Dr. Williams emphasized, it's essential that we center early educators in our understanding of the challenges and proposed solutions in ECE. To that end, I'd like to turn to you next, Suzanne. Can you share your path and some of the challenges you've experienced in the field?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. I found my way to early childhood in my early 20s as a volunteer and then a child advocate at the Boston area shelter network, Casa Mirna. And after clearing out my savings account to earn my associate's degree in early childhood and my lead teacher certification, I chose to teach where the need seemed the greatest, at Head Start. And what a gift it was to discover a job that I love and I'm really good at. And what a privilege it is to be present in the lives of young children and to be trusted to support them and their families. And the benefits were decent, but the pay, even as a single adult, was not a living wage. So to make it work, I found roommates and I took on a part-time job in the evenings. And every single teacher at my Head Start site had a second job. A few years later, I was a full-time Head Start teacher and a full-time restaurant manager working 7 days a week. And I could keep up with my bills, but I was exhausted and I wasn't doing either job well. I had to make a choice and I chose to stay at Head Start because kids deserve great teachers, teachers who are able to stick around, who have the time and energy to dedicate their full selves to the work of supporting the children and families in our state who need us the most. But in 2013, a choice was made for me. The federal government shut down, which meant automatic budget sequestration for Head Start, and the families I served in West Springfield were given just a few weeks' notice that our site was closing down. All of the teachers were laid off immediately, and I suddenly found myself with no income and no health insurance, and I was 10 weeks pregnant. Quick shout out here to Mass Health for the subsidized baby, because basic human needs should be subsidized for folks who need it. Part of why we're here tonight. A friend heard about my situation and sent me a quick text that said, "Come teach with me. You can bring the baby with you." I can what now? She had a small family childcare on a farm in Northampton, and I joined her and stayed with her program as it grew. I paused my teaching to go to Smith College and earn my bachelor's degree so that I could keep my teaching license. And that friend provided the low-cost childcare I needed as a single parent to focus on my studies and graduate with highest honors in 2017. I'm still teaching with her, still single parenting. You might hear Bluey playing in the background, but I've asked her to turn the volume down a couple of times. And one of the reasons I can keep teaching is that I'm paid more than double what I was making as a Head Start teacher. And that's a combination of luck and privileges. It's not that I'm twice as good or twice as valuable. Two big privileges I carry into this work that landed me in my current teaching position are I am white and both of my parents were college graduates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and the challenges that you faced, and congratulations for the successes that you've had to get where you are now, notwithstanding some of those obstacles that we have in the place. Can you just share a little bit more about what that kind of moment where you finally shifted from out of the Head Start system where you're getting obviously substandard support and then began earning a higher wage. Can you just share a little bit more about what that meant to you in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. One of the values of our small school is that staff make a better than living wage. We make a thriving wage. Just months before the shutdown closed my Head Start classroom in 2013, I was at the Massachusetts State House asking legislators to increase wages for early childhood educators. I explained to them that my annual gross pay was under $15K per year for a job that now requires a bachelor's degree, and I was on food stamps and fuel assistance. A choice to serve Massachusetts families also meant that I was choosing to live in poverty. I was stretched so thin that when I look back now at how hard I was working, at how much more I'm able to dedicate myself to my work now that I have stable housing, stable income, secure access to food and heat, it feels so basic to say that those things were not secure for me when I was working for Head Start. Now I can be fully present in my classroom in my work with families, and this is not a criticism of Head Start, just to be clear. I know that wages have increased since then, but the MIT living wage calculator estimates that those same Head Start positions I was working at best, pay $12,000 less per year than the living wage in their respective counties still. It's not simply a difficult choice to work in early childhoods, it's unsustainable in its current form. So I'm so grateful that we're here talking about this tonight and that you're including my voice and experience here. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Suzanne. We appreciate you sharing it. So
Dana.
let's shift a bit. I want to bring Barbara and Liz into the discussion next. Barbara, you come with not expensive. I wish. We all wish that we had expensive experience. You come with extensive experience in center-based programs, and Liz, you bring expertise in family childcare. Can you each share your observations on the challenges center-based and family childcare providers face to recruit and retain early educators, and what you think are the major causes of these challenges? And maybe Barbara, we'll start with you.
Yes, thank you, Mark, for inviting me to this great opportunity to share with everybody. First, I'd like to say that everything that Suzanne talked about still exists today in the center-based world. It has not gone away. Teachers are still struggling to make a decent living wage and to be able to pay their bills and feed their families and provide the support that they need. A lot of early childcare educator teachers still qualify for subsidies and receive TANF and can qualify for discounted childcare through the state system. And that is wrong. That should not happen in today's world. I think the pandemic opened a lot of people's eyes as to what the childcare force could impact the working field by when we shut down, right? Like lots of people still couldn't continue to go to work because childcare programs were not open, and those ones that were open had limited availability where they could only take certain number of children in emergency childcare programs. Program directors are stressed right now. A lot of them have retired or have left the field completely. So we have new leaders in positions who have not been given all of the skills and the support that they need to be a successful program director. Also, they're struggling with, because they don't have enough staffing to keep classrooms and programs running the way that they should be running. They're constantly shifting and moving people around, right? So they're asking teachers to go to different classrooms because somebody called out sick, or they're asking them not to take a break because they might not have break coverage. They're not able to approve vacations and sick time when a teacher may need to take a day off to go to a doctor's appointment or something. So there's just, the level of stress has increased since the pandemic hit us, and we've taken quite a few steps backwards, right? Because we're now in the beginning stages of trying to build back the field. But when you stop and think about it, like, other than really caring for children and want to make a difference in families' life and help to develop those assets that children really need to have to be successful adults when they're learning and their brain is developing, who would want to join our field? We're not going to pay you enough. You're not going to be able to pay your bills. You're going to continue to qualify for subsidy. Oh, you're probably going to have to turn down any pay increases because once you accept them, you'll no longer qualify for subsidy, which means then you'll probably really have to quit your job and maybe go look somewhere else. And I can also echo that most of our teachers are working more than one job right now.
Mm-hmm. I feel like thank you is the response to appreciate you sharing the information, but it's not the right response for the reality you just described. There's nothing thankful about this. It's actually disgraceful as a country that we've allowed this to happen for so long. But don't get me started. Let's keep it rolling. Liz, can you share from your vantage point as well and your expertise around family childcare and from a union perspective too?
So my first experience with family childcare was as a mom when I was pregnant and looking for childcare 10 years ago. And I knew I wanted to have my kids in a family childcare. I really liked the idea of a home environment. And I found one in my neighborhood that came recommended by a friend. And so just felt really lucky. And from, my research, I knew that her rates were, affordable. And also, it was shocking. We were a 2-income household. I thought we had, middle income jobs, and it was stretching us so much to pay for full-time care. And the paradox that I experienced at that moment was also our provider. I live in the city of Worcester, and our provider was a renter on the first floor of a triple decker. So I was like, okay, all of my income feels like it's going here, but she's obviously not, raking in the dough. So that was my first time really seeing how much of a paradox the system is. And in my work now with the SEIU Education and Support Fund, I feel so privileged to work alongside family childcare providers and really work to support them in whatever way we can and understand their struggles. And during the pandemic, the dedication I have seen from these mostly women and some men to using the time that they were closed to professional development was some of the most inspiring, I think, moments in my professional career. I think I've worked harder than I ever have before just because I wanted to support these folks that were so dedicated, showing up by the hundreds for online Zoom trainings and discussion groups and support groups. It was just mind-blowing and amazing. And I think, what we learn from family childcare providers as we, become really close with them and work to understand what are their challenges so that we can understand how could we try to support them as best we can. And so we hear that they don't feel valued by society or by the systems that make decisions about early education and care. They feel so completely left out. We support a workforce here in Massachusetts of about 2,400 family child care educators. Over 50% speak Spanish as their first language or their primary language, and just feel as though they have very unequal access to information. And I think that's as a whole for the field of family child care. And I think it's felt even more within communities where English is not the primary language. We know that they are so driven to get more training and more education to try to, show that they are worthy of respect and that they are professionals, that they are professional educators, because they're so often treated as if they are not. And they don't always often feel as though they have access to what it is they want or really need in that education and training. We hear over and over about the challenges of being a business owner on top of being an educator. And, when you talk to family childcare, they're also cite for you. They're like, I'm the nurse and I'm the cafeteria staff and I'm the psychologist and I'm the janitor. And so it's not just that they are an educator, they are the whole program, and they're a business administrator. They're a sole proprietor. And the paperwork that comes along with that and the management that comes along with that is really daunting and overwhelming. And there is very, very little support for that aspect in particular. And then, we work with the family childcare providers that are unionized, which means they are serving families and children with subsidies. And they feel as though, they do that to serve their communities. They do that on purpose. But they're sacrificing financial security, very much in the way, Suzanne, that you really spoke powerfully about, because those subsidies are not a realistic or a livable wage, definitely not a thriving wage. The family child care providers, educators will also overall cite a lack of supportive infrastructure just as a whole, access to information and resources, all of the things that they need to figure out on their own, really. And they often then resort to creating informal networks amongst each other, which is a really beautiful thing when you get to witness the way they support each other. But the fact that they are forced to do that because there's no other support systems for them is really challenging. And the isolation, right? Because they work alone, sometimes with an assistant, Oftentimes the assistant might be a family member. So they're very isolated from each other and really have to seek out ways to connect. And those that do find supportive networks will say that those are their lifeline and those are the reason they're still in the field. And those that don't have those really struggle with the stress and all the emotional pressure, I think that comes from doing this work in isolation. And one of the most amazing things is, with these networks is that the way I see family child care educators supporting each other in informal ways is, they are really acting as like professional mentors and coaches, and no one is recognizing or seeing it or acknowledging that they can do that, and they do it informally, and it's really amazing. So, there's so many challenges, there's so much beauty, they're so dedicated, but all of those challenges can really override all of the amazing things and really push people out of the field.
Understood. Thank you, Liz. And now both of you, Barbara and Liz, have been involved in running some specific sort of innovative programs to help address the workforce pipeline crisis. And I'd like to add in Dr. Williams here as well. But can you each describe the efforts that you and your organizations have been making in that regard? Maybe we'll go kind of same order, Barbara, Liz, and then Dr. Williams. So Barbara.
Yeah, thank you. So for us at the community group, we have our own training department that we oversee, and we also oversee the Professional Development Center for the Northeast region. And so we couldn't sit back and wait for somebody to kind of solve this problem for us. So we've been piloting a new teacher training program where we're recruiting people who are potentially interested in joining our field, and we've been able to support and connect them with community colleges and get them enrolled so that they can take the courses that they need to become teacher certified. Our agency has also adjusted our teacher pay scale a few times. We're getting ready to do that again. During the pandemic, as I think Liz said, most of our teachers and our bus monitors took advantage of registering for college, and we have our first cohort that's getting ready to matriculate into college to finish their associate's degree. We primarily work with Hispanic and Spanish speaking educators, so we've partnered with Urban College and have been able to establish a pipeline there where we're able to provide support through that. But one of the, I think, best things that we are piloting right now is that we're working with these educators to get them in a paid placement right now, so that they can earn I'm not going to say a living wage, but they can earn some money while they're working towards earning the number of months that they need to become a certified teacher. And in Lawrence, we've partnered with some other agencies that were struggling also to recruit and fill some positions. And so we really started with changing people's mindset that those BA teachers and those experienced teachers, most programs are doing a really good job trying to keep them so that they are not out there looking for new employment. And so we had to start with changing mindset and get programs to understand that we're starting at the beginning and at the bottom. But if you're willing to take one of these students and place them in your program, you can mold them into the best teacher that you want them to be. And it also provided an opportunity for seasoned teachers to become mentors, and we provided them with a stipend so that they could mentor these new mentees that were coming into their program. We've been pretty successful. Other programs are hearing about what we're doing, and so now everybody wants to kind of grab one or two of our mentees and pair them with a mentor. So we're pretty excited about that. It's been pretty successful. We're continuing to look for funding so that we can pay these placements. There's not a lot of funding out there right now. And so those are some things that we're doing. We also increased some of our benefits for our current staff that we have. They get paid for planning.
Excellent. Thank you, Barbara. Liz, do you want to share a bit about your efforts as well?
Sure. So we offer a couple different types of programs. So we offer some general professional development and training, and usually what we offer really comes directly from educators themselves in terms of what they are interested in or don't see enough of. Most of our training, probably 80 to 90%, is all delivered in Spanish. And so that tends to be what we offer. And it can range from anywhere from like a 2-hour workshop to like a 14-hour more professional learning community type of delivery, everything from working with arts to the neurology of the brain and how that affects different types of development. So really kind of a broad range. And then we have some more specialized programs that are really trying to speak to what educators tell us they kind of want in terms of transformation for themselves as family child care educators. So one is peer mentorship, and that's a program we're just launching our first pilot of here in Massachusetts in collaboration with a couple different programs. One is with a program here in Worcester, which is an apprenticeship program that's developed, and another is in the city of Chelsea with La Colaborativa, who is launching a program to support people in getting licensed for the first time and opening a new program. So we're training a group of mentors, like current licensed family child care providers, in the skills of mentorship to then be paired with the apprentices and the newly licensed folks. So we're really excited about that. We have a lot of pilots going on, so you're gonna hear me say pilot a lot. We are also piloting, we're like kind of in the middle of it, piloting a program to train family child care educators to become trainers and facilitators. Because I work trying to organize all these trainings, what I found pretty quickly in the last 3 years was that there were not enough Spanish speaking trainers to deliver the amount of training that is really being demanded. And what we've seen other models in other parts of the country where the family child care educators themselves being trained as trainers is really this amazing model because of that alignment of experience, specifically of just because of how specific family child care really is. So we have a cohort right now that we're training that I'm very excited about. And something that we're hoping to launch later this year is a program called Educator-Led Communities of Care. Because we're a national nonprofit that has really state affiliates, this is something that has been developed nationally with family child care educators from a variety of different states, telling us what kind of supportive network they would like to have and how it would operate and what it would consist of. And so that's this educator-led communities of care that will really offer a lot of the like professional type supports of businesses, mentoring, peer-to-peer supports, as well as the emotional and mental wellness supports of being in community with each other. In our state affiliates in Rhode Island and Connecticut, we have registered apprenticeship, which we're hoping to be able to bring to Massachusetts as a really exciting model for family child care. We have the first family child care specific registered apprenticeship in the country in Rhode Island. And so we're really hoping to expand that. And then also advocacy and leadership. And that really fits in really well with the Common Start campaign. We're able to really seamlessly engage a lot of family child care educators in the process of this campaign from the very beginning, giving their input and feedback on what should be in the legislation, really calling out what are the questions and concerns, and then engaging them as advocates, as storytellers, connecting with their legislators so they're able to really step into positions of leadership and engage with the legislative process and really shape what they want for their field.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Liz. It's amazing. I don't know how y'all are getting all that done, but thank you so much for what you're doing. Dr. Williams.
Yes, thank you. And I just love hearing Barbara and Liz, what you all are sharing here, talking about apprenticeship, mentorship, really kind of thinking about how we engage future workforce. And I think that resonates a lot with the work that we do at Jumpstart. And this work is so critical when we think about future workforce, right? How we're introducing folks into the sector for a lot of the reasons that Suzanne outlined in the way that she shared her story, right? And some of the most recent data collected looking at, jobs in the ECE sector, the center has CSCCE noted that as of February, there are 131,000 less jobs in early education in ECE than there were at the start of the pandemic, right? And to your point, Mark, the teacher crisis and what we're talking about, this existed before the pandemic. And so we really kind of have to be thinking about this at both ends. How do we support our existing workforce, and also how do we recruit and retain and sustain early educators? And so I think, as far as from the Jumpstart perspective, me on the job 6 weeks, I know as a former core member from Jumpstart that, we reach thousands of college students across the nation and engage them in opportunities to serve in ECE settings to support children's learning and development. And many of these students find inspiration and purpose through this work and go on to become early educators themselves, just like I did. And so Jumpstart is really working hard to leverage the power of its influence on inspiring future early educators and its alumni base to more intentionally support them to enter the workforce as prepared and effective early educators. So we've been really working to articulate what this work looks like through a bold strategic plan that really sets the foundation for us to bolster our workforce development strategy and explore how we work with higher ed partners to provide these experiences that place students in ECE settings and help them to develop their budding skills as early educators and just inspire them to do this work as future early educators. And there's also an important intersection of our workforce strategies at Jumpstart with the work that you're doing, Mark, with the work that the policy team is doing, because we know what meets them on the other end, right? We know what meets future early educators on the early end, and this is what on the other end, and this is what Suzanne has painted for us. And so it also keeps in the picture that I painted earlier for us about the status of the current ECE workforce. So we're building strategies not only to address the teacher crisis by growing our pool of future early educators, but also addressing the contemporary issues and enduring inequities that early educators face through our policy work. So ultimately, we're trying to pool while we climb, right? We're trying to get at these workforce issues on both ends. And I think that's what's really special about the work and the opportunity and that we have at Jumpstart to really look at workforce issues and how we create the system as it needs to be to make sure that as we're inviting and welcoming future early educators, that what's on that other end once they get those degrees and once they start working in these classrooms, so it isn't the daunting working conditions that Susan so just, I don't want to say wonderfully, like that's not the word either, but just the way that you painted it, Suzanne, I think that's just so important, and we want to mitigate that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. And Lisa, you have been incredibly patient, and thank you very much. As our colleagues share their stories and perspectives, but now I really want to focus on you. The perspective of the business community is so important to raise up here, and we thank you for being a part of the conversation. And here's my first question for you. Why are Suzanne and her early educator colleagues so important, not only as human beings themselves and for all they do for their students and families, but also to the business community and the broader workforce, and especially women?
Love the question. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here. Here's the wonderful thing about going last. Anything I had written down before, I've just been so absorbed in all of your stories so first of all, of course, Mark, what the answer that I would have given a while ago is still the same, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. But Dr. Williams sharing that the incredible data, to ground all of this so that there's a real, there's a picture of what's happening is excellent. It's what's needed. Suzanne, your courage and your vulnerability and sharing your story. I don't know if you could see the chat, how people, were connecting to that. Barbara, for me and the perspective I'm bringing, which is the voice of professional and executive women to the table here, the resonance around the impact of the pandemic on the broader economy and workforce. And Liz, I did want you to know my dad grew up on a 3-decker on Shamrock Street there in Worcester. So, so many women who work outside of the home relate to that personal experience you had of, you're working and you seem to be, you're making a decent income, but you're passing it on to the child, and it's heartbreaking, right? To hear the stories of how we're all working so hard. Like, if there's something we all have in common, it's the energy that women put into this economy. And I just wanted to say, in all your stories, what's so impressive, the innovation, the resilience, and the passion you have for your work. And so, Mark, that's like the first answer. Why do? Because it's amazing. But I think on some level, there are two reasons why this is all so important. And one is a big picture answer to your question from a business community perspective, and one is just deeply personal. On that big picture perspective, I am just waiting for someone to really come out with the full study of how do women contribute to this vibrant economy in Massachusetts, because it's significant. And the Globe, late last year, the Boston Globe had one data point that the top 100 companies that were founded or led by women contributed $67 billion in revenue and operating budget. That's a lot of jobs that women are creating. That's a lot of good that women are contributing. And the work that you all do contributes to that, whether you're running your own businesses, or supporting the childcare of others. And we know that having, as Senator Warren pointed out, affordable, accessible, quality care is the tailwind, that really helps to make that happen. And that is something else that we have in common. And as Barbara pointed out, we know that the reverse is true, that when that childcare is not there, you don't have to look far to see the impact this has had on women's ability to be in the workforce to begin with. Women had been one of the most significant changes in the workforce over the last 50, 60, 70 years has been the rise of women's participation. Currently in Massachusetts, 60% of the workforce is women. And yet the pandemic has knocked back our abilities to build livelihoods and careers by about 10 years by some estimates. And women, some of my colleagues, one story in particular, a woman entrepreneur who runs a placement firm, has just seen this incredible churn of women not being able to hold even temporary jobs because of the lack of childcare. And the other thing I just want to say, just from an economic perspective, we are in a whole new world. It's not just that we're all virtual, it's that we've had this loss of major industries, and what's happening is more and more women are starting their own businesses. And so how do you grow and start your business when when you're not able to have that support that you need? But the second reason, so that's the big picture economic reason, and but the second is a more deeply personal one. So I've been an entrepreneur now for more than 2 decades. And I am also a mother and a mom, and my children are older now. But first of all, you've seen the parent like me who's like trying to rush in, and you're trying to get, your child, you're trying to be a good parent, you're trying to be good at your job. And you know that as a parent, you're only as happy as your least happy child. So, to have the confidence and ability, just deeply personally, what you all provide is so important. So, Mark, that's my answer to that great question.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and so grateful for taking our vantage point just a little bit more broadly and realize the breadth and impact that the early childhood sector has really for all of us. So in the interest of time, I so want this to go another half hour because we have so much to say and so much more to do, but I have promised folks to that we were aiming for an hour. I will ask though, I hope folks can hang on for at least 5 minutes over here, because I do want to have a little bit more space for folks. First, for questions and answers. So I hope if you all have let me just look for a quick thumbs up from our panelists. Can you all hang out for maybe an extra 5 or plus 10 minutes? Excellent, because I'd love to be able to provide space for our attendees to ask their questions as well. So let's turn to that next. Are there questions? First of all, let me just say, I've seen wonderful ideas and comments in the chat already. And for those of you as panelists, I know sometimes it's hard to speak and also look at the chat. I encourage you to take a look at the chat now if you haven't had a chance to. There's a lot of fantastic ideas already suggested. But yeah, any questions? We'll just open it up, see what's on people's minds. You can offer a question, just unmute yourself and ask, or feel free to drop it in the chat and I will ask it for the group. Yeah, great question. So I'll read, I sort of summarized the question from Elena. Thank you so much for submitting it. Essentially what she's sharing is, this is a repeat of other battles that she's been involved in the past, at least for her, back in the 90s. To kind of reach, here we are, we're still raising these issues. We continue to press forward, advocating for Common Start, advocating at the federal level for what had been described as Build Back Better. Who knows what version it's a final reconciliation package will be, but obviously we need to keep pressing there as well to ensure that whatever deal gets done in the next couple of months includes funding for early childhood education. But I think her fundamental question is, how can we all move ECE forward in this country finally to the next level? Who might want to start responding to that one? Go ahead, Suzanne.
Just a piece, I think that underscores some of the points that Dr. Williams has made is that, in our conversations about ECE, there are some deep truths that are uncomfortable for us to look at about the reality of why the majority Black and Brown workforce of majority women is paid the least. It's not an accident. It's by design. That's a part of it. Turning that rock over and looking underneath it is uncomfortable. And looking at what our coordinated efforts to keep women from acquiring wealth, to keep women from working outside of the home, all of that is so deeply connected to ensuring access to early childhood care, and why for some people it's not just a low priority, it's a priority to prevent access to high quality care and affordable care. So, looking under the rock and really facing some uncomfortable and ugly truths about our country is a really important piece. And I feel like we're moving closer to these conversations. The fact that I can even say this right now tells me we're moving closer, and we need to keep that energy up.
Thank you, Suzanne. Any other comments for the panelists before I turn back to the chat? Okay. If possible, might the interpreter be able to share the comment from Rosario in the chat? I want to be sure we capture that point. If you can hear me and you're able to do that for us. Now I've really challenged folks on the spot. I'm sorry. Mostly what this is underscoring for me is how much I need to refresh my Spanish and how disappointed my college professors would be in me in this moment that I'm unable to translate. What I believe, I think the comment was really just stressing the challenges with, and I believe the family childcare context, and specifically, you're not able to take vacations, you're not able to afford rent, et cetera. That's going to be my best effort, and it's insufficient, but wanted to make sure those points were shared. Okay, maybe we can pick out one more question. Yeah, so yeah, let's see, just to raise this one. Talking about sort of infrastructure, the question really relates to the facilities, infrastructure, and the risks and impact that can have on both children and the teaching professionals. Maybe Barbara, might you want to speak to that one in terms of what you've seen, and I'm sure challenges that you all may have faced in terms of improving buildings and maybe ideally might have some more resources available to help support that kind of infrastructure adjustment.
I guess I would say that the early childcare field licensing office has some really good rules and regulations in place, and programs are visited on a regular basis to ensure that health and safety requirements are in place. And I'm not sure that the same standards apply for like elementary schools and stuff, right? Like we're really held to making sure that we're in ratio compliance and that we have gates on doors for the little children so that they can't run out of the buildings, and all of those things. So, and we're held to those standards, right? So like when if a program is one child over, you're cited and put on probation, or you got to put a plan in place on how to remedy that. So, I feel that in our field, the early education and care department does a really good job of licensing and regulating those rules and regulations to ensure that children are kept safe at all times, and that programs are adhering to the rules and regulations that they've put in place. I can't speak to the elementary ed school, although if you do have ever had a child in first, second grade, class size is an issue, and I'm sure that there's some standards there that are probably not in place or being adhered to.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And I do see, for those who are following the chat, our translator is kind enough to fully translate that question earlier. So I encourage you all to take a look to see the full comment there. Thank you for doing that. So I so want to keep going, but first of all, let me just quickly mention, so many of the challenges that you all have identified in the work that you're trying to do to help address the issue really on your own in many respects. The individual programs you all have worked on and are trying to address the workforce problem, huge credit to you for what you're trying to do. But let's be honest, you're doing that largely in a vacuum, without sufficient support, without sufficient system and structure around you to do it. And you all deserve the kinds of resources to really help strengthen those programs and make them more effective and make them more broadly available for more and more communities. And I'd also just quickly add, the Common Start bill addresses so much of the workforce crisis that we've talked about in multiple ways. It would require educators to be paid on par with elementary educators. It would provide a professional development grant program. Y'all have talked about apprenticeship programs and affordability of additional credentials and so on. That professional development grant program would include scholarships, loan forgiveness, and financial aid for those who are both currently in the field and others who are seeking to enter the field. And there are also other provisions that relate to setting compensation and benefit guidelines. The state would be tasked with, and our state early education and care commission or department would be responsible for setting those guidelines, and then as a state providing the funding to help reach those particular goals. So there's so much in the bill that is really trying to get at so many of the things you all have said. And as Liz said, it's no surprise. It's because this was a grassroots organization from the start. We designed the bill only after listening to members of the community, folks like Suzanne, who've been doing this work for so long and trying to address the challenges. So I just say that quick, so you all have a sense of that. Again, I so wish we could keep going. But let me stop. Let me just say, first of all, and if you all have access to your little reactions down there, please send your hearts and your applause and whatever other Zoom method you have to appreciate our panel. They are amazing. Their jobs are, the work that they have done, the efforts they have made is really remarkable. We need to do more to support you all. Our state needs to do more to support you all. And yeah, I knew you'd all be great, but you blew me away too. And just thank you all so much for what you do. Next steps, let's talk a bit about those. If you're not already involved in Common Start's efforts, there's a couple easy ways to get involved. You can sign up as an organization, and you can sign up individually. Remember those chapters that we have around the network, and our team members right now are dropping links into the chat, and we're going to leave this call open for a bit so you can pull down the links that you need and want to be involved in. And James, thank you so much for putting that in. Sign up, stay in touch, keep listening to us. Also, we have currently an open petition that you can sign on and let your folks know, let your elected officials know why it's so important to address the issues we've talked about on this call. And James, on the spot again, just put it into the chat as well. So check out that petition, and I encourage you to sign on there. And then finally, yes, you absolutely should be reaching out to your state senator, your state rep. Like I said, we've done a lot of outreach already, but we do not have the full body fully on board. And even for those that have signed on along the way, you really want to make sure that you haven't let up, that we are still watching, that we need them to follow through and deliver. To the point of the earlier comment about we've been at this for decades, it's true. But now more than at any other time in our past, we have an opportunity at the state and at the federal levels. Please don't let up. And so let me just encourage you as well, not only for our state folks, but for our federal folks as well. And hopefully we'll have a link in there to Bingo. Ryan, my amazing colleague at Jumpstart, on the spot. That is another link to reach out to our congressional delegation and help you and folks in other states as well. Obviously, we need everyone reaching out. Okay. Last but not least, a final thank you. Want to appreciate Ryan Tellingator at Jumpstart. You just saw his note in the chat for all his work in preparation. Deb Fastino and James Wu from Common Start. You all are amazing. They're incredible leaders. We wouldn't be here without them, and their partnership on this event is invaluable. Also want to thank Tom Weber, the Massachusetts Business Coalition for Early Childhood Education, Amy O'Leary at Strategies for Children, and Chris Marino of Teach Plus for their help in building out this amazing panel and bringing all of you together tonight. And of course, want to thank Senator Warren for being with us via video. In true Common Start fashion, this was a major collective effort, and thank you all.